Welcome to the Thing About the Salem Witch Trials. I'm Josh Hutchinson. The Thing About the Salem Witch Trials just took a trip to New England, and we got to see some historic places and talk about the history with a lot of people.
This is Sarah Jack. We got to attend multiple events. The first stop was History Camp Boston at Suffolk University Law School in Boston on August 8th.
And then the next day, we attended the Connecticut Witch and Culture Festival held at the Old State House Plaza in Hartford, Connecticut.
But on either side of that, we got to do some historical site visiting and enjoyed just being some Descendants touring New England.
This trip was so fantastic. I really want to tell you about everything that happened. It was all so cool and so meaningful to be in these locations.
We want to tell you about a couple stops we got to make with our colleague, Mary Louise Bingham, who you know from the podcast, The Thing About Witch Hunts.
In Danvers, we got to see the memorial there and pay our respects to those who were convicted of witchcraft. So Sarah and Mary and I are all descendants of Mary Esty, and so it was very special to visit her old home site together and see the land where her house used to stand and where she used to garden and raise her family and all those things. It was so special that we three cousins were there together to do that.
And when the three of us are together, we naturally start talking about the family history, the family members. Mary and Josh have more members that they're related to, so you've got those extra connections. We were standing around talking about the night that she was rearrested and where she was.
As Sarah mentioned, I do have quite a few ancestors who are involved in the Salem Witch Trials. One of my ancestors, my paternal 10 times great-grandfather, Joseph Hutchinson, he was the man who donated the land in Salem Village for the Meetinghouse, where a lot of the preliminary examinations were held, and a lot of those scenes that you see of the afflicted girls having their fits in the middle of court while they're, the judge is trying to talk to the accused and the jury's trying to hear everything. And these girls it's pandemonium and chaos. It sounds like the local cafegimatorium during lunchtime. The meeting house that Joseph Hutchinson donated the land for, you can visit a replica of that at the Rebecca Nurse Homestead, which is also in Danvers and just around the corner down the next street. This replica was built on the Rebecca Nurse Homestead for the 80s miniseries, Three Sovereigns for Sarah. And this meeting house replica was built to the original specifications of the one that they had built in 1672 and placed on that land, where now you can go and visit the Danvers Witch Trial Victims Memorial right there. And across the street from there was where the meeting house actually stood. So when you're at that memorial, you're very close to the heart of all the drama.
Yeah, we were so close. We were able to just pretty much pop around the corner to the Ingersoll's Tavern property.
Yes.
We went over and checked on how it's doing, and it's about the same.
It's still standing. That's the important thing.
Maybe you have visited the Samuel Parris Parsonage. Of course, there were other ministers on that property too. We got to do that with Mary. I had not been to the parsonage site before. Walking up in the heat with chickens playing in a yard. We spent some time there talking about what did the records say was happening with witches on the property. And we got to talk to some tourists who were there checking things out. A lot of these places, it's the first time for me to visit. And I'll probably always remember the chickens.
I remember going and walking around this site and visualizing in my mind what was happening inside that home, starting in January 1692 when Abigail Williams and Betty Parris became afflicted and then were determined to be under an evil hand. So what was happening with them? They accused Tituba of afflicting them. She's the enslaved woman working in the household. and she took care of them. And so I imagine that too. But then they turned around and they named her as a witch.
A couple of the things that I'll probably remember is there was a family there, and the plaques at the historic site really mean something to people. They look at those for information, but I also saw phones out trying to get as much background as they could to really understand what is the history that was here, where we're standing right now. We, of course, have been going through the Salem Witch Trials day by day on the Salem Witch Trials Daily podcast, so we have a lot fresh on our minds about the parsonage.
Definitely. The parsonage was the place where it all started. And so it's important to go there and experience that. It's where Samuel Parris lived. It's where George Burroughs lived, and Deodat Lawson lived there. Joseph Green moved in after Samuel Parris moved out. So lots of significant people lived in that house, and they all played roles in the Salem Witch Trials. George Burroughs, of course, gets arrested, convicted, and hanged. Deodat Lawson comes up and gives a fiery sermon right at the beginning of the witch trial process. And of course, Samuel Parris, they let him record the examinations. He was taking the notes of official court business while his niece and his own daughter are accusing people of bewitching them. So conflict of interest was major there. But then after he was gone, Joseph Green came in and he got the village to come together.
So we were standing there thinking about those afflictions, and they happened there on that ground. And the colorful tales that were told about the pastor's pasture.
Right. We got to look at where the pastor's pasture used to be. We could imagine this open field there and witches convening 40, 50. At one point, there's a report of 120 at that location. And they're having this Sabbath, taking a mock sacrament of red bread and blood wine from the devil. The man in the high crowned hat is what they call him in these stories, but he's the devil. And he's telling them to destroy Christ's kingdom.
I really think about the people when I'm there. I'm not thinking about the evil that was told in stories to be taking place. Seeing the foundation, it really grounds me in, wow, this was somebody's home. These girls were afflicted in their home. I just really want to make a point that it's not a ghost tour. Like, the things that happen there are sensational tales, but that's not what we're visiting. We're not visiting the Sabbath. We're visiting the home where the girls were afflicted. We really think of Tituba a lot because her words on how she loved the girls really, really sink into us. And a way that we found to honor her was to have a brick installed with the heritage bricks over at the House of the Seven Gables. And I was so happy to get to go in person to see the brick. And there are lots of other family legacy bricks present. So they're doing a great job of filling their sidewalk with names from the community that people cherish.
We got to see all these cool places in Danvers, and I just want to mention real quick, we went to the Putnam Pantry, which was next to Joseph Putnam's old house, where he supposedly kept his horse saddled at all times in case he got accused of witchcraft, or his wife did. And we got to look at that house, spend some time at the pantry, eating their wonderful food. They have great meals, ice cream, a large candy selection, fresh made candies. It's wonderful in that place. Go there every time I visit Danvers, and have been doing that since at least 2001 on my trips to that town.
When I've gone to Salem, it's one of the first places we start at. So it's almost like our launch pad into our visits and events.
Yeah, it's a bit like a base camp. go in for breakfast, head out and see some sights, come back for lunch and go see some more sights in the afternoon and have some ice cream at some point, which we actually did get ice cream, but not from there. We went to Essex Street as well in Salem and got to walk the street. It was a little warm that day, a little humid, but there was a nice little sea breeze in there, and we got to walk and do some window shopping. I bought a t-shirt, and we went into a place and got some ice cream. I ate pistachio, which is my favorite, so that was delightful.
I had raspberry truffle, something like chocolate truffles, not mushroom truffles. So the reason we were extra ready for that ice cream is because the town hall was open and the Salem 400 exhibit was open. It's on the top floor and it's so hot up there. But it was a really great photo exhibit of the last 100 years.
There was the photo of a huge bonfire they had.
The area they call Gallows Hill, they were doing annual giant bonfires at.
Right. And when we say giant, we're talking about, 40, 50
Stories
feet
high.
of barrels stacked on top of each other, and they'd ignite all these barrels. It must have been quite a sight, and you must have seen it from a distance, being up on the top of the highest hill around.
Absolutely. There was some student dioramas there. The trial of George Jacobs was in a little diorama. That was really cool to see that student's creation. And just obviously the last 100 years isn't when the Salem Witch Trials occurred, but you can't help but have that on your mind when you're looking at the history of the social culture in that town. Halloween was there. Which city was there in that history when you're looking at it?
In that exhibition, we could see that fusion of those histories coming together. And we got to experience that just walking Essex Street and through the other historic streets of Salem. And one of those is Charter Street, where we visited the Charter Street Cemetery and also the Salem Witch Trials Memorial. And spent a lot of time just remembering the people who had fallen, just connecting on some level with that history and that injustice.
It's really remarkable visiting the memorial that sits there beside the Charter Street graves. It's busy, but solemn. People are there interested in what they're reading and thinking about the history. The only chaos is the attraction music that's booming in, but it eventually gets drowned out by just the enjoyment of the preserved cemetery. It's quite amazing that so many people can walk in and enjoy it. Like we are, considering how much traffic is going through there and what is preserved in there.
I was very moved by the experience in the memorial and the cemetery, but that music was a big detraction. It makes it hard to reflect on things when you're hearing the song, "I Want Candy."
We heard it at least 5
blasting,
times.
and we're walking in a cemetery and hearing that music, and it should be a quiet space. The city should make that a quiet space.
The crowd was at the memorial and in the burial space.
I love that there are docents at the cemetery now that monitor what people are up to, make sure people are staying on the paths and not touching the graves or rubbing them or sitting on them, eating their waffle cone on top of one of the graves of somebody. So I like that. There are people there monitoring it.
It was really fun fueling up that historic energy as we went in to give a presentation at History Camp Boston, which is a really awesome one-day conference put on by the Pursuit of History. It's a nonprofit, wonderful programming, but to be a part of History Camp 2026, was amazing.
This was our first time attending history camp, let alone speaking there. And it was just so fabulous. We got to do a talk in a courtroom. We talked about how English witch hunting manuals influenced New England's witch trials. And our presentation examined how the witch hunts were deliberate legal proceedings rather than hysteria. And we traced an unbroken thread that runs from England to New England and forward to the witchcraft accusations that are still ruining lives and killing people today.
When Puritans migrated, they carried an entire apparatus of law and doctrine, created basically a mirror of the same law statutes against witchcraft, and used the same theology and courtroom procedures to convict.
Right. By 1692, the colony's original charter had been revoked, and they were ordered to have their laws not be repugnant to the laws of England, so they had to match. And so they governed by the 1604 Witchcraft Acts of England, which made witchcraft a felony and punishable by death.
So we got to share about that in this courtroom full of attendees. We were one of the first presentations of the day. We had some special friends sitting in there listening to our presentation. Margot Burns, Mary Bingham, Kathleen Langone, who actually gave us our first podcast experience ever. And we got to meet Giovanni Ilario during our presentation as well.
And we met Witches of Massachusetts Bay blogger Robin Chalmers and Tricia Pione, who works with the Congregational Library, looking at their historic records, and they're preserving those and sharing those with the public. And I just want to mention about Kathleen Langone. She hosts the podcast People Hidden in History. She has a book out now about the painter Amelia Kushner. And we want you to check those things out too, because those are fantastic. And like Sarah said, we've been on Kathleen's podcast. She's been on our other podcast, The Thing About Witch Hunts. And Mary was on our Thing About Witch Hunts a long time.
And Margot Burns was one of our guests. So getting to spend the day with her in person was just fantastic. I mean, awesome, fantastic, special. It was a really great day.
It was a real thrill for us to have Margot Burns in the front row of our presentation, cheerleading us, supporting us as we spoke. And it was also a thrill to get to see her speak in person, because never done that before either. It was such a fabulous talk too.
It was so great. What was the title?
So Margot gave this talk called Fake Portraits of Illustrious Leaders in Boston. It was about this art dealer, Frank Bailey, and how he ended up selling a number of fake portraits of people like Governor William Phipps. There's a fake of him. There's a fake of Stoughton. There's all these fakes, especially these early Massachusetts leaders got faked in Boston and sold to some illustrious museums at high prices. So it was a really great talk to listen to.
Yeah, she really put together great visuals. I mean, we're getting to look at the portraits, but she told a story with her slides while she's telling the story. It was, I was totally enamored. It was fabulous.
The visuals were amazing. There was especially one slide that I remember where she had a whole bunch of thumbnails of portraits on there, and then she X'd out one by one the ones that were fake, and there weren't many left after that.
So yeah, we're showing off a little bit. She came to our presentation. We went to her presentation. We also ate turkey with her. It was great.
One reason that I was thrilled to get to meet Margot in person was that I've been following her posts about the Salem Witch Trials back when she had a listserv in the 2000s. I've been following her work for about 20 years, and meeting her in person was just a delight.
The added bonus for me is she's also a Rebecca Nurse descendant. So
Oh, yeah. So
we're
she's
cousins.
our cousin.
Yeah.
I'm a cousin of her, too, because I'm from Rebecca's sister.
Plus, we had lots of listeners come up to say hi to us, people who are following the podcast and the projects.
Which was amazing to experience that. People were coming up to us all day wanting to talk about our talk and ask us questions and get more information and share their thoughts about these demonologies and other witch trial manuals that we discussed.
That's one of my favorite things about live presentations is you get that back and forth because it does inspire people who are attending are usually quite curious or have their own research experience on it. So when the conversation can happen right there, that is the best. Because with podcasting, we do get lots of wonderful emails and comments that we get to engage with. But the face-to-face, we really, really value getting to do that when we have the opportunity.
Right. And, in addition to having our talk, meeting all these wonderful people who are fellow history nerds and just want to dig into the facts, we also got to learn from a lot of other talks there. There were a lot of talks about the revolution. There was a very popular one about Metacom's resistance, aka King Philip's War, and so many other
Lizzie
talks.
Borden.
Yeah, we went to a Lizzie Borden talk. That was fantastic.
I also really enjoyed the Boston Literacy Tour talk. That was great.
That was fantastic learning about, there's so many writers that have been based out of Boston. It's incredible.
Yeah. And when we say there were lots of presentations, it was 7 sessions, 8 sessions with 6 to 8 to choose from at every session. And it was a sold out conference. So it was a crowd. It was really fun and exciting.
I definitely recommend you check it out. Go to historycamp.org. Check out the organization, The Pursuit of History, that runs History Camp. It's such a good experience.
It's an on-conference conference. So if you have research that's important to you that you like to share, you can apply to speak. Apply early and get your tickets early because it did sell out. Massachusetts was just our first stop. There was another really important stop, and that was Hartford, Connecticut, because for 2 days, End Witch Hunts and the Connecticut Witch Trial Exoneration Project had a history and remembrance information booth at the Connecticut Witch and Culture Fair, which was a free event right down on the square at the old State House, where some of the history that we talk about happened.
Our booth was there for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and we had volunteers there Saturday. We couldn't be there with them, but they had a great time and told us there was a lot of engagement. We experienced a lot of engagement with the people attending and the people working at the festival, coming up to talk to us, ask us questions, talk about their ancestors who were accused of witchcraft in Connecticut, talk about the exoneration, and sign our wonderful tribute cloth that Sarah brought. And she's going to show you that in just a second.
Our wonderful volunteers that make our project work were at the booth answering these questions, but also when people came up to talk to us about the history, we had our tablecloth was a tribute cloth. So you could draw something of remembrance, you could write something to your ancestor who was accused of witchcraft, or a lot of people were just learning about the history for the first time and they still wanted to leave a tribute. So we have this wonderful memory cloth. And it's really important because at this point, Connecticut doesn't have a memorial for the witch trials, but they want one. They want an opportunity to remember the history and give respect to the families that were affected by it. So having this activity at the table was very meaningful. And we did a remembrance ceremony both days at 2:30, which we read the names of the victims and we read the resolution that cleared their names.
And While we were there, we had the privilege of seeing the Hexenbrutes dance.
There's 15 troops across New England, 13 had representatives there.
Right. And if you've never seen a Hexenbrute dance, go to YouTube and pull one up because it's an experience. They're out there just having a blast, and they are dressed from head to toe in their witch regalia, and just the movements, the use of the broom as a part of their performance. It's just so fun, and they're just enjoying it. It's contagious, their emotion, their enthusiasm for it.
Project volunteers Tony Grigo and Dr. Richard Ross III gave presentations during the festival that were really important. I'd really like to thank Charles Rosenet, the founder of the fest, inviting us to be there, because getting Tony there, having Dr. Ross there, having the table, this event is one of the few times that the witch trial history is free to the public. Right there. You can't just walk into Connecticut and experience that. So it was really important and special to have that opportunity.
And the location right outside the old State House, that was the location where they used to have the Meetinghouse in Hartford. And the Meetinghouse might have been used for the trials of those they accused of witchcraft. And the jail was also nearby. So the poor innocent people who got arrested were there near where this was transpiring. And we were telling about that history right there where it happened.
So everyone who was able to come through, and there were a lot of you, thanks for stopping and saying hi and talking to us about the history. And thanks for leaving your mark on the tribute cloth. That is a really special memorial that is part of the history now.
Right. So thank you all. And thanks to all the volunteers for all your efforts. Thanks to Patricia Brune and Anna Vaughn and Dave Phillips and Tracy Boiselle.
And Mary
Bingham, of course.
We also got to meet a podcast guest of ours for the first time at the fest on Sunday. This was a great surprise. Lauren Kavanaugh, a playwright who recently spoke with us over on the Thing About Witch Hunts podcast about her upcoming Alice Young play, came by the booth with great news.
Windsor's Daughter, the new Alice Young play by Lauren, now has a date on the calendar. Written in collaboration with award-winning author Beth Caruso and drawn from the real history of the Connecticut witch trials, it receives a staged reading on Saturday, November 7th, 2026, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Sunroom in West Hartford, Connecticut.
Please go listen to Lauren and Beth talk about creating this play over on The Thing About Witch Hunts. That episode is called Connecticut Witch Trials Before Salem. The play Windsor's Daughter restores Alice Young's legacy.
Come see it or take part. Lauren is also seeking performers and readers, along with a videographer or photographer to document the evening. Reach her at lmkavanaugh@gmail.com. That's lmkavanaugh@gmail.com. Or call or text 347-520-1765.
We had 2 wreaths there. One wreath was for the historical witch trials, so it had the names of the 11 that were hanged in Connecticut as alleged witches. But there's also another wreath there, and that was important too, because August 10th is World Day Against Witch Hunts. And this event was on the 8th and the 9th. So we were able to raise awareness about the modern people suffering right now because their neighbors or their family are accusing them of witchcraft crimes, and they find themselves in the same place that the victims of the historical witch trials found themselves in.
We did a very special episode of our other podcast, The Thing About Witch Hunts. For August 10th, we released it a little before that. We spoke with Sister Lorena Janal and journalist Jörg Novak of the German Catholic aid organization Missio, who were the creators of World Day Against Witch Hunts. And Sister Lorena was involved in the rescue of the woman that this day was founded for, Christine. And so she's a Swiss Franciscan who has spent 47 years in Papua New Guinea. And in the last 14 years, she's rescued more than 420 women accused of sorcery. And the women who Lorena and her team rescue, they find shelter at the House of Hope, which is a facility that Lorena had built using funds she received from a human rights award, the International Weimar Award for Human Rights. And so that was able to fund this facility, which is changing lives.
Definitely check this episode out where we talk to Sister Lorena and Jorg Novak. In this episode, Jorg describes how the project's working outside Papua New Guinea too, including places like Liberia, Tanzania, Ghana, and Benin. They discuss the scale of this. And you may be surprised to hear us talking about this on a Salem Witch Trial podcast. But it's really important. And that's why this trip from the Salem Witch Trials through Connecticut to World Day Against Witch Hunts, it's all connected. It's all about witch trial history. And the history is still occurring right now because it has never stopped. It's the same patterns that you see when you're looking at the Salem Witch Trials or the Hartford Witch Panic, patterns of scapegoating and misogyny. There's also severe sexual violence and public humiliation, and police corruption, inaction. But there's lots of advocacy efforts in play, and that advocacy is something that falls on all of us. But listen to Sister Lorena and listen to Jorg Novak to find out how you can get more involved, and listen to us and to our podcast.
We care about the people who were killed in Salem Witch Trials, Connecticut Witch Trials, Boston Witch Trials, all witch trials. And so we care naturally about people today who are suffering the same fates, but often facing worse torture and other brutality. So check out the thing about witch hunts. We've got a good number of episodes talking to these advocates around the world. There are so many people working against this, but we need everybody.
When you're planning your summer 2027, keep in mind History Camp Boston and watch for information coming out on when that is happening. And mark your calendar for the Connecticut Witch and Culture Fest. It's been the same weekend the last few years. It probably is going to be that second weekend in August again. Keep your eye out and mark your calendar for August 10th. That is World Day Against Witch Hunts.
Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we hope to see you next week again. And please share the episode with your friends and family and coworkers, anyone who's interested in witch trials. They'd love to know about this podcast.